All right, so now that we're done with the low brass, we're going to go ahead and move on to the French horns and trumpets. I usually break them apart uh, between trumpets and horns, and then kind of trombones and down in the orchestration. So let me play the French horn and trumpet for you and show you what we're going to work with. All right, so let's go ahead and break down the instrumentation. So I've got a horn solo patch, which isn't playing right here. Then we've got a 2-horn, another 2-horn, a 6-horn, 12-horn, a 12-horn mute. Then the trumpets, I've got trumpet articulation, another one, and a harmon. So I'm really utilizing this concept of layering here. I obviously don't care about how many horns I have. I've just combined different timbres with other timbres with other timbres with other timbres to give me, a thicker sound. So if we listen to what the 2-horn sounds like by itself, and by the way, these are still kind of dirty. We're going to go through and fix them later. So the 6-horn. Yeah, so they have their own timbres. I like the low end of the 6-horn patch, and I like the brighter sound of the 2-horn patch. So I combined them together. It's just layering. The 12-horn patch. So for me, the 12-horn patch is almost it almost sounds like if you combined, the timbres of the 2 plus the timbres of the 6, you would get a 12-horn patch. But I wanted more volume and I wanted more fullness, so I added the 12-horn patch. And then, like I did with the trombones earlier, I went ahead and layered a mute on top of everything else. So yeah, that obviously needs a lot of cleaning up. But so if we listen to all these together. Yeah, so I mean, you can kind of hear all the timbres. It doesn't sound like 12 horns. It sounds like, you have this kind of 2-horn section, this 6-horn section, this 12-horn section, this mute section. It's kind of just, it's almost like a me sound. I wanted one sound. I had desired a sound, so I combined the necessary patches to get that sound. So I mean, the only way to get to that point, to know, oh, I want this kind of sound, how do I get there? You just got to play with it. Take whatever sample library you have and just mess around with it, and you'll only get better at it. So if we go to the trumpets. So harmonically speaking, that's just all major triads. It's got a very Holst, the planets kind of sound. If you haven't listened to that piece, it is required listening if you want to be a musician. and you have to listen to it at least 100 times. So if you haven't done that, then you need to go ahead and start. So the trumpets, I kind of like the way they sound as is. You have 2 trumpets here, 2 more trumpets here, 2 more trumpets here, and that's just samples. That's the way these patches are built. In this patch there's 2, in this patch there's 2 more, etc., etc. And then just like I've done with every brass section so far, I've layered in a muted sound. So if we listen to that just one more time. Now what if I take out the mute? Let's see what that sounds like. Add it in. Yeah, so that's actually the best example I've been able to show you so far of what a mute can really do for your sound if you choose to add it in. So I really, really like that muted but full sound. I mean, usually when a trumpet player puts a mute in, you are losing a lot of volume. But when you keep the timbre of the mute and then add in the volume that you wish you had, it creates a really desired sound for at least me. You might hate it. I love it. The trumpets are actually pretty clean. I like the way they sound right now. So we're going to go back to the French horn and kind of tweak with some of this MIDI information and get it sounding a little bit closer to the way I want it to. So let's just zoom in on the 6 horn, and I'll bring it up, hitting Command 6. Select this, Command 6. Now, the way Cinesamples works, you can kind of choose how your velocity information acts. The way I have it set up is this is an articulation patch. This is a 6-horn articulation patch. So it's got staccato and legato built in. So I have it set up where the low velocity MIDI notes are short, and the long velocity notes, or the high velocity notes, are long. So let me play that for you. All right, and then, so you can kind of, it's really short, but you can kind of, so low velocity is short and high velocity is long. It might seem counterintuitive, but when you get into these really fast action pieces where you have to do a lot of playing and repeating notes with your fingers, it actually is a lot easier when you just have to barely hit the note than when you actually have to press down. Because usually if a line has a long staccato, it's not as busy of a part, so you can actually put more weight into the key and actually focus more on that note. And also, with Cinesamples, you have your sustain pedal. And this is actually a very common thing throughout most libraries. So this is something you can apply to everything you're using. With patches that have legato and staccato or any kind of layered thing, usually the sustain pedal is going to control when you have the staccato on and when you have the legato on. So for Cinesamples, when the sustain pedal's up, or I mean when the sustain pedal's off or up, it's going to be your staccato. When it's down, it's your legato. So you can control, in real time as you're playing, if you're using the staccato patch or legato. So if we listen to this and you watch the sustain pedal, you'll see it correspond to what the note needs to be lengthwise. So computer's acting up a little bit, but it's okay. So if we go to our modulation tab. Modulation is where I spend most of my time editing Midi. Um, Most sample libraries, at least the more advanced ones, are going to have you're going to use your modulation to edit not only the volume of your note, but also the different layers inside that note. That sounds confusing, so let me elaborate. If you think about a French horn player, and when they play really, really loud, not only is their volume different, but the timbre of their instrument is different. I'm not, read up on physics or how any of that stuff works, but my guess is the louder they're playing, the bell is vibrating more. It's got, more of a higher pitch, higher frequency content. So you can't just record a French horn at a very low volume where it has a very soft, very rounded timbre and then just turn it really loud and expect that to sound like a real instrument. So with these more higher quality libraries, and really most libraries, but with your higher quality libraries, you're going to be able to control what timbre you're using. And with Cinesamples specifically, you can control the timbre at the same time as the volume. So if you look at this line again with the modulation in mind, so you can kind of see, and you can see these drop offs are like decrescendos, and they make sense because as you get softer in volume, the timbre of the instrument's going to change. Um, so let's clean this up a little bit because it doesn't sound quite like I want it to. So that doesn't sound good to me. The beginning of this note's a little too abrupt. So let's get a little picky. I'm going to kind of draw in. Let's do some more. A little bit better. Oops. Yeah, so that sounds better. All right. The end of this is it'll do. All right, so this one's not aggressive enough. I don't like the way it's sounding. So we can either use this slider right here to see where our velocity is, or we can click here and hold. That's not telling me what I wanted to tell. No. Okay, well, we can go to our note velocity and see where it is. So you can see it's a little higher than this one, which makes sense. The higher you go in velocity with Cinesamples, the longer it's going to be. So let's drag this down. You can do it that way, or you can hit escape and press 9 and go to your velocity tool and drag it down. So let's listen to that. Yeah, perfect. That sounds way better. So let's go back to our modulation and kind of do what we did here, right here. It's a little too quick of a cutoff, so I wanna round it out a little bit more and do this. Yeah, it's much better. All right, so if we go back to our velocity control, or is it note velocity? These are too long, and if I look, it makes sense. These are higher than this, higher velocity values. So if I go back to the velocity tool, I'm gonna drag these down. Let's listen to that. This one should be a little bit longer. So let's raise it up a little bit. No, not quite. Oops. Hate that. Still not there. There we go. I like that a lot. So let's go back to the modulation. Let's get even more picky and do this thing again. Uh, and how nitpicky you want to get about this is up to you. Sometimes I do these little crescendos on the beginning and I hear it. Sometimes I don't. It just depends on the nature of the piece and the nature of the line. Sometimes it doesn't make sense for the note to kind of decrescendo. If they hit it really hard, you might want to do the opposite and kind of do this kind of thing. It's really up to the piece. For this piece, I really want to round out the beginning a little bit. Okay, so that's all we're gonna do. You just can apply these concepts to the rest of the whole piece, and really anything else you're working on. If you want to get a little bit deeper, get a little more advanced for a second, you can add another layer of volume control and add an expression. Expression is for 90% of the libraries you work with, expression is going to be your volume. It's basically your volume fader. So, in addition to having that modulation fader that moves with the line and kind of decrescendos and crescendos and kind of acts as your volume fader and your timbre fader, you can also add in another expression fader. So a lot of people, and I do this a lot, is kind of set your expression fader for the dynamics of the piece of music or the section of the music that you're writing. So if I want forte for this section, I might set it right here. Think maybe fortissimo's up here, forte's right here, mezzo forte, and so on. So you can do that. If you drop it all the way down here. But this kind of shows you why using the modulation is important. If you listen, you can hear the bright timbre of a loud French horn at a soft volume. It confuses your ears. It doesn't make any sense. So don't ever do this. When I hear this, it just screams, novice, unprofessional, not very good mock-up. So don't ever do this. Always think about the timbre and the volume at the same time. So if you want to add more flexibility to maybe these end of these notes or the beginning of these notes, you can actually use your expression fader too. So let's kind of do this. Maybe do this a little bit too. Bring this back up and then do a little fade right here. Bring back up here. If you have OCD, you can round this out a little bit more. Because that actually, if you think about it, it makes a little bit more sense. Nobody decrescendos perfectly. Yeah, so that's just another level of control that you can add to your mock-ups. If it's a very subtle part, in the background, you might not have to worry about implementing this new expression fader. But if it is a forefront horn line like this, you might want to think about, making it sound as realistic as possible in using the expression fader as much as you can. All right, so now that we got the French horns kind of where we want them, let's get into some of this trumpet stuff. They sound pretty good as is, but everything can always be better. All right, so it sounds pretty good, but let's dig into this Trumpet 2. Let me see if we can find something to fix. So listen to that. All right, so there are a couple things that I hear. First off, these note values, right here. Could be a little stronger. So let's go to velocity. This right here. Oops. All right, so that sounds good. Now let me show you an example of how some of your long notes could look if you weren't to ride the modulation fader when you recorded. So let's do this. Let's make this straight too. There's a better way to do it than just dragging your pencil across, but for this purpose, it's fine. So that might sound normal to you, but it's not realistic. No one holds a note. Not usually. A note is not held at equal volume the whole time. Usually, and most of the time, there's going to be a little bit of phrasing going on. So if you were to think about how a person might phrase this, they might start a little soft. The high point of the phrase is right here on the downbeat of the bar, and then they might kind of taper off. And I still want more from that, so let's go right here. Let's do it here too. And I know the end of this phrase needs to kind of be more of an abrupt cutoff, so I'm going to exaggerate this decrescendo a little bit more. All right, and I'm going to show you this real quick because this can be very annoying if you don't understand why your DAW does this. But your at least Logic, when it's always going to store the last node that the cursor went across. Okay, so the best way is just to show you. So I'm going to stop it in the middle of this staccato phrase. All right, so the last node that Logic has come across is this staccato phase, or the staccato node right here. So now if I play it right here, the last thing Logic ran across is this node. So when I play this, it's going to be staccato. Should be. Okay, so one more time. Okay, so you always have to remember that. So the way to get around that is just to put a node right there. Okay, so that's very simple to understand. Now let's go back to modulation. Yeah, I could tell that this just starts like this, so it's kind of crescendoing a little bit. I want to keep that. Still a little too loud. Okay, so yeah, it's sounding pretty good. So let's do a little bit more. Let's get in with the expression and kind of fine tune this. So you can copy and paste, but from the modulation data, but I don't like to make such big changes when I'm doing expression. So I just kind of like to make minor changes. So I'm going to do that. Let's do little crescendo there, little decrescendo. Go back up, and then maybe do this. Do it here. All right, so I mean that's just very subtle. It's not near as wide ranged as the modulation. It's really just just kind of a fine-tuned control. So if we like, I know these two right here should decrescendo more. So let's listen to those. All right, so this one I want a little bit more decrescendo, so I'm going to use this expression fader to do it. Okay, so yeah, so just always know that the expression fader is there to fine tune some of your volume changes, some of your modulation changes. It's always a tool. You don't have to use it, but if you need just a little bit more control, it's always there to be used.